Greetings everybody. In the last video I alluded to the fact that I wanted to do a review of a product of edged weapons from a company called Zombie Tools. Um, I'm not going to do a channel that's all about reviewing bladed weapons or guns for that matter, um, because there's other people who've done that a lot better than me. But I know a lot of my subscribers are actually kind of interested in this, and I also noticed there's a lot of buzz about Zombie Tools out on the internet, but there's not actual many people who've actually bought them and used them. It seems to be that most of the enthusiasts for bladed weapons tend to not have a ton of money, and so they can't go around buying very many. And while I don't have a ton of money, I can comfortably purchase these things. So I kind of, not entirely as a whim, I bought a few first and then more later. Um, I thought that I would do it, and there's some interesting dialogue that takes place regarding this company and their products that I think is kind of representative of a lot of popular cultural reactions to marketing and product placement and that sort of thing. So there is going to be some libertarian content in here, but just not a ton. So just be warned. Now I'll start with the first one that I bought, and many of you will know this already. But I was first alerted to this company by a YouTube user by the name of Scalagrim Nelson. Now, Scalagrim Nelson first came to my attention many years ago because he did some videos about gun control in Norway. I believe he's originally from Germany, but he lived in Norway for a long time. And there's just so little content about gun laws in other countries, and especially in Europe. A smattering about the UK, and very very little else. So, he was quite a good information source for that. Now he's since really developed his channel a lot. I think he has like 200,000 subscribers now, and he's really specialized in edged weapons. Um, and probably several months ago, he was sent this item. This is a Dadao style or inspired cleaver called the Reaver Cleaver, and it was sent to him by Zombie Tools in a very clever marketing scheme. They sent it to him for free, and then I, of course, bought one, and I know I was not the only one, and then I subsequently bought quite a few more. And so, yeah, whoever it was at Zombie Tools that decided to send Scalagram Nelson, or if that's how I'm saying his name right, really smart on their part. But anyway, I tend to trust him as a reviewer because he typically finds fault with pretty much everything. He submits the blades to pretty intensive tests. He eventually ended up shooting this with a 223, which did shatter. He shot it with a 22 originally, and it didn't do anything. But before that, he took this to town on all kinds of difficult to cut materials, wood especially, and it held up extremely well. And yeah, I'm not a huge blade person, but I do like the idea of playing around with them and then having them as kind of a last resort. I do travel the country a lot, and it's nice to have something that you can reach for in your car um, if you don't have a gun handy. So I purchased this a few months ago, and at the same time that I purchased that, I also purchased this guy. This is called, they call this the Zephos. This is very much inspired by Macedonian slash Greek style swords. Of course, obviously the ones that are bronze or whatever iron ore they were using. This is made out of modern spring steel. I forget the exact designation, but this is differential hardness. You've got a distill taper, and this is very much alive in the hands. It's very sharp. It's got quite a point. Probably can't focus on it very well. Nice leaf edge, so there's a gentle curve to it. And really, I had never really, before holding this, I'd never really held anything that was could be called really a sword. Um, I've had stamped pieces. I bought stuff at gun shows. It would be stainless steel that was stamped to look like a katana or whatever else, or a long sword. And there is a significant difference in the ergodynamics. At a distance, looking at them, you can't always tell. And it's not like a sword that's stamped out of stainless steel won't cut anything, because that's certainly not true. Um, but there is a definite qualitative difference. These are much sturdier. They're very well balanced. At least it feels that way to me. And others who have handled them, who have them, will say the same thing. And I really like this blade quite a bit. This is not a tool. This is something that actually you could take out camping. This would be good for chopping wood or for clearing brush, or even in the kitchen perhaps. It's a little bit big, although they do have smaller versions. This is a fighting implement, although obviously you could cut with this as well. So this item, the Zephos, really, really impressed me. And as soon as I returned to work um, last July, I went online, and they usually take about 6 weeks from the time you order to the time they arrive, although that varies quite a bit, I'm told. But I went ahead and ordered 2 more. I ordered the big brother of the Zephos, which I call the Dephos, but I guess that's a little easier to pronounce, the Diphos. And you can see it's a very similar shape, but it's considerably longer. One thing that I noticed right away, and then Scalagram subsequently, he actually got his in the mail within a few days of when I got mine, and then he did a review of it. It is designed to be two-handed, but it really does feel like this could be a one-handed sword. The pommel seems a little bit too much. Not the pommel. The grip seems a little bit too long for what you have. Now again, this is. I'll come to, because there's some basic general things that could be said about zombie tools and apply to this blade. This is not a heavy blade. This feels very light. It feels very well balanced. Again, very high quality. He put this thing really through very rough treatment, and it performed beautifully. That said, this is a little bit heftier and a little bit heavier than a more strictly historic blade would be. If you were fighting somebody who was similarly armed but with a slightly lighter blade, and you had similar skill levels, they would probably have an advantage. Fortunately, I don't think that's a very likely scenario. But yeah, this is very sharp. These come razor sharp. Again, distill taper, differential hardness. There's their logo, the ZT. They're all full tang. Everything that they produce is full tang. You can see it's a single piece of spring steel that goes all the way through. And these pieces here are apparently aluminum. Now, apparently there's something that can happen, a chemical process whereby aluminum and steel can corrode, although I've heard zombie tools say that this requires static electricity or something to happen. Not a chemist, so I don't know how true that is. But the wetting of the two is seamless on all of the weapons, and they all have the same configuration: full tang with I believe these are bolted on. I don't think they're welded, but then they're ground in such a way that the wetting between them is seamless. And another common feature with zombie tools is the very bottom of the blade has a blunt, I don't even want to say edge, but section that allows for very grip uses. But yeah, this is probably right now their most expensive blade and their most time consuming. The main difference with these more symmetrical, more balanced, more traditional sword blades as opposed to the single edge blades is they require a great deal more workmanship and labor, and so they cost a lot more. But yeah, this definitely is a nice sword. Um, and Scaligram's review of it, he said straight up, the quality's all there, um, and these are pretty much as fine a blade as you can get. Now, aesthetically, it's going for a certain style, and you may not like that style, and that's actually one of the things I'll talk about kind of at the end here. They all come with these nice sheets, Kydex sheets, apparently. So next, this guy right here, not a sword at all, although it's long enough you might almost call this a short sword. This is they call this the Felon, although it's very clearly inspired by, if not a copy of, the Bowie knife. This is probably the one that I will keep in my car. I did read a review online, and somebody did use this to process a deer carcass and said he had no trouble even cutting through and dismembering the bones, the pelvis, that sort of thing. So very hard. Differential hardness, again, see if it focuses. I don't know if I'm going to get it. Yeah, it's a little blurry. I apologize. The finish is a combination. I believe that they go for that finish. But and if you look at older blades, they have slightly different ones, and so I believe that they have toyed with. Again, here you've got the this section right here that's not sharp. Allows you to grip it like that if you want. Uh, leather grips. Someone has commented that it looks like duct tape. Perhaps it looks like it's electrical tape or duct tape, but it's leather, and they appear to be quite tight. Although I've also heard that that's one of the aspects of their product that they work on the most, that they're not always satisfied with. But this is a good knife, and this, since it is smaller, this is one that is a little bit cheaper. You notice it's quite thick. I have to look it up, but yeah, it's like a quarter-inch or something like that. It's quite thick. So again, this is a little bit heavier than it might be. It also means it's a lot sturdier. This thing is like, you'd be very hard to break this with your own physical strength. But yeah, this is a great car, or taking out camping or hiking. You know, as long as you weren't really super concerned about weight issues, this is a great knife. Now, this is probably the one item that I like the least. I'll say it that way. If I had to go back and not buy it, I might not have. They have complained, they've gotten complaints that a lot of their blades are short. Even the Difos is not that long. Most of the blades, though, they have are shorter than that. And so this was kind of an attempt to compensate something a little bit different. So this is not short. This is a single edge. They call this, I believe, the Harvester. A single edge, again, full tang, just like everything that they have. And I like the lines. I like the aesthetics of their lines do appeal to me, which is not to say they would appeal to everyone. They're not objectively good, but I like them. This is quite sharp. It's single edge. There's a video they have uploaded on their website of a guy cutting, I think, like 24 or 84 or some large number of beer cans with a single swipe of this. See, there's a slight curve. It's not so much it's curved as the width decreases, giving it very subtle curvature. But this is a fairly heavy blade. I think this will be fun to swing around, so I may change. As of yet, I haven't had a lot of opportunity to cut much with these yet, so I may change my mind. So this is very much an initial review, and there's no promise of a future one. Unless I get lots of people asking, I'm not going to do that. But again, you know, the quality's there. This isn't a cheap sword by any means. It's just very long. I think it's like 3.5 or 4 feet, something like that. Just the blade. I'd have to look. It's not quite as it's got a distal taper as well. You can see it's considerably thinner at the top, at the point, and farther up the spine than it is at the base. But this is probably the one I'm most inclined to think I didn't need to get. Need. That's a fascinating word in this context, isn't it? All right. So here we've got this one. This is called the Deuce 2. I would really like to get the Deuce 1. I don't remember exactly what these look like. My Chinese blades, I'm not familiar enough to say which ones. They had a Deuce 1. There's a very famous video of the Deuce 1 called Destroying the Deuce, where they basically attempt to destroy one, and they do all kinds of very impressive feats of endurance with them. They chop through a metal car hood, they chop up cinder blocks, they chop up phone books and wood. They chop up computers, televisions. They place it in a vise like this and bend it 90 degrees, and then release it. It comes right back and remains, perfectly straight, or as perfectly straight as you can see. They even suspended it between, two bricks, and then had two guys stand on it again, depressing it not 90 degrees, but a great deal, and step up, and it bounces back. And they eventually wrecked it by just starting to smash a Jersey concrete barrier, like you see on the highway, just repeatedly, and it snapped after everything else in that. Now this is, I guess, the same line, but it's a slightly upgraded design called the Deuce 2. Um, this is kind of a medium-sized sword, I guess you would say, or a short, or maybe a small one. Again, full tang, like everything else. It's got a nice curve, very scimitar-esque, especially with this wider part here. Yeah, I think this is a nice one. Um, I think part of me says objectively this is one of the better ones, although my personal aesthetic, it's not quite. Um, there we go. You can see the differential, the grind. Again, very, very sharp. All these are very, very sharp, all the way to about there. That's when it starts to widen, and then this area is broad enough that you can. One thing though you will say is not most of these have almost little to no hilt or handle guard, so if that's something you care about, yeah, this is a nice one. I mostly bought it because of the videos of the Deuce 2 or the Deuce 1, but it's good as well. Now this is their Katana facsimile. They have two. They have a shorter one and a longer one. This is the longer one. I believe this is called the Katana. This is much narrower than their other blades. It's much more gracile. However, again, like all of their tools, this is not as thin and narrow or as gracile as a more historically accurate katana would be. This feels quite light in the hand. It's interesting. It's longer than the Difos, several inches longer, but it's noticeably lighter. So yeah. But even so, it is heftier than a more historically accurate katana would be. So again, if you got in a sword fight with a similarly skilled, opponent who with a more historically accurate blade, you might be in trouble. And I just think by just articulating that circumstance, one is forced to realize how absurd it is. And I'll come back to why I keep pointing that out. But yeah, I really do like this. This is going to be a lot of fun. This is probably going to be the one that I spend the most time with. Nice point, very sharp, razor sharp. I like the patina. I think part of that is the heat treatment, but mostly that is an aesthetic that they are going for. Similar bottom is. You can grip like that if you want. I'm not saying this is a good way to grip a sword. I'm just saying you can. Yeah, I definitely like this one. I bought this at the same time as I bought the Difos or Difos. If I had to pick one, it's hard to say. The double-edged nature of the Difos and its pointiness. I think it's a higher quality, more labor-intensive item. I don't know if I actually like it better though. But yeah, I do like this one. They have a smaller one called the Zakasushi, I want to say. It's probably cheaper because it's smaller, but just as good, I'm sure. There are reviews of that online if you look. Now this is kind of the oddball out. This one is unlike the others. This is called the Harvest or the Reaper, and this is more of a Naga. What is it? Nobunaga pole arm, although not really. This isn't that long. You see this grip section is, maybe 3 feet long. And again, this is full tang. This single piece goes all the way to the back. You can't see it when it's all wrapped up, but that's the same piece of steel all the way. This one should be a lot of fun. This is like a really good Halloween item, I would say. Again, razor sharp, um, and this is their only kind of pole arm type thing. It's not a true pole arm. It's not that long. It would be very heavy if they made this, long enough to actually use against cavalry. Um, but I do like it. I think this will be fun to swing around and see what it can do. It is so long that you could probably get a lot of leverage on this, a lot of speed at the tip, and it would probably cut through just about anything. And again, this patterning is very consistent. I don't know if they have only one or two that don't have this. They have blades, by the way, that I did not purchase. There's a number, and there's some that I would like to that they don't have right now. So this should be fun. This is an interesting wall piece too, I'd say. And then this one, unfortunately, you can no longer buy. It was discontinued. This is the so-called bone machete. Very sharp point. Very, very. It's a little bit front heavy. And it's one of the two kinds that they have that I bought anyway that have any kind of handguard. Maybe just a little bit. It's not like a full protector grip, but it's a little bit more than most of the stuff that they produce. And I really liked this. I liked the way that it looked, and then there were some good reviews of it online. Some people had purchased this. And because it's single-edged and because it's relatively short, I thought that it makes good sense to have two. So I bought one, and then about a month later, they announced that they were going to discontinue this item at the end of August. So I went ahead and bought a second one. Because they really do really lend themselves to being a pair. These are very, very sharp. They're very mean looking. I mean, uh, when you swing them, they do have quite a bit of, because they have so much weight at the tip, they have a lot of leverage there. And yeah, I mean, I like them a lot. Interesting too. Um, I read they made a post on their website about discontinuing it. And I kind of wondered how that process works. You think as long as they're selling a lot of something, they're not going to stop, and that's not entirely true. Some of their workers, I guess, apparently get really bored of doing the same blade, or they'll eventually stop. But they said they changed their website format, and for whatever reason, the way that they changed it uh, drastically reduced the number of people who ordered these. Good question as to why, because all their blades are very prominently displayed. None more or less prominently than any others, as far as I can tell. And they said, oh, when they redesigned it, orders for these just dried up, and so they canceled the item. But not before I was able to buy a second one. And then yes, you combine them together, and they form the ultimate sword. Not true, but yeah. So these are quite nice. They're heavy for their size, but they're not that big, so they're light in the hands. So yeah, I very much like these. That's why I bought two. And I guess I'm a little bit late. You can't buy these now, except for on the secondhand market. And, the thing is, the secondhand market on zombie tools is quite limited because there's not that many to begin with. The people who buy them tend to like them, and as a result, there's just not many second. They do exist. I have seen people trying to sell them, but it's quite unusual. So the last one that I have here is a cutlass-inspired design called Decapitan. This has almost a full guard, so it stands out in that respect. And I must say, this is probably the best deal for the money. This is the most length blade I think you can get for your dollar. It's a little bit, it is thinner than some of the other blades, but not thin. Again, you can see there's quite a drop right there. This feels very alive in the hand. Again, you can grip it in this way, just like all the others. I've seen several reviews of this. It has very good cutting power. It's got nice curve and a good point. I think this is $300 or $400, where some of those longer blades are six and a half. This is a nice one, and I actually have considered getting a second one of these. This seems like it's a good double, thing to have in a pair as well. If I was only going to get one and I was on a budget, this might be the one I would get. Of course, if you're really on a budget, open question whether you should be buying something like this. Not really. I mean, values being subjective and whatnot. But again, full tang. So this is all a single piece. This is guard, the blade, all the way back to the end. That's a single piece. I forget what kind, but it's a very popular type of spring steel for swords. So yes, definitely like that one. So now, I think some general things to kind of point out about these. When you read debates about zombie tools online, and there's quite a few among blade people, a lot of people are curious, and then there's a lot of, I'd say, very unfair criticisms being leveled against them, and they fall into a number of fallacies. One is no true Scotsman's fallacy. Basically, a lot of people really like to pride themselves on how sophisticated and picky and demanding they are in terms of their standards. So I remember reading one guy said, "Hey, when I look at a blade, I want the following statistics, and I want all these different statistics to be listed. And if the company doesn't list all of those statistics, it means they're not a serious company. They're not really a blade company. They're just playing, because if they were serious, they would list, whatever the type of heat treatment, blah blah blah." I think that's a very silly argument. Now, it's valid to say, for instance, I think that it should have these particular treatments, and if it doesn't, then it's an inferior product. Fine. That's not the point he was making, though. The point he was making was, unless the way that they're marketing these, I think, is not, it demonstrates that they don't care about this in the way that I do, and so they are inferior. And there's a lot of that kind of attitude of, look, a real knife should look a certain way, and if it's not like that, then I don't like it, and it's inferior in some way. But I've never seen anybody say those things who actually had one. Every review that I've ever read of somebody who actually possessed one of these was to say that they were very high quality, very good workmanship, very functional, and very capable weapons. I mean, could you get better blades? Sure. But, this is one of those diminishing returns things, and where you get, the top 2% or whatever is twice as expensive as the lower, and I'm not saying it's the second best sword or anything like that. I don't think so, but it's very high quality. It's about as high quality as you can reasonably expect to get. For a lot more money, you can get something that's maybe minusculely a bit better, but I don't know if there's any manufacturers who are en masse doing that. I'm sure if you go and find, like the greatest sage swordsmith, blacksmith someplace, they can probably make you something that's better if you pay them, $30,000 or whatever. So I don't think that's fair. Another thing, a very common one, is they don't like the marketing. They don't like the fact that they kind of have this post-apocalyptic, kind of theme going, and that they kind of are explicitly saying, "Oh, these would be good if you were fighting zombies." That's fine if you don't like that. There's nothing wrong with not liking that. There's nothing wrong with saying, "I'd much rather have either no blades or blades that are like facsimiles of historic blades." Neither one of those are better or worse values when it comes to picking. And so for you to say, well, these are objectively inferior blades because they don't adhere to my aesthetics, is not a valid critique. It's not a way to really talk about them. One thing though that is kind of can be pointed out, and I've said this, and others have pointed it out before, the blades that they make are a little bit heftier. They're a little bit thicker. They're a little bit, um, you know, less maneuverable, if you want to say that. And that means that, if you got in a fight with somebody who was similarly armed, but with something that was a little bit lighter, but had a similar skill level to you, you might be in trouble. And again, to point out the scenario where that would matter, is to demonstrate how absurdly unimportant that scenario is. Because how many times have there been duels? Not anymore. Not since the age of the ubiquity of firearms. You don't have duels like that, and it wouldn't just be, say you were armed with that Katana, and you got in a fight with someone who was armed with a more traditional katana. The only reason it would matter would be if your skill levels were close enough that the difference in the tactical capabilities of the two blades mattered. So if you are not skilled and the other guy is very skilled, it wouldn't have mattered if you had an identical blade. Likewise, if you're very skilled and they're not skilled at all, it's not going to matter that your blade is slightly slower and slightly heftier. It's only going to matter on the margin. And like, again, even having a duel with somebody is going to be very rare. And I mean, very rare. It's so rare that like the chances that Ebola causes there to be an actual zombie apocalypse, they both approach zero as far as I'm concerned. So I'm not sure this isn't a valid critique in any objective sense. Now, is it valid from your own perspective, from your own aesthetics? Absolutely, that's fine. This other blade that I purchased, this is noticeably lighter. Noticeably lighter. It's also a lot smaller. This thing is much more likely to break. Which is not to say that it's a hunk of junk or whatever. But this is going to break a lot easier than those other ones. So they're like, yes, the downside is if I had to fight Jet Li, I'd be in trouble. But I don't see that happening. The fact that they're sturdier and heftier means that they will be more durable, which is good. I'm most likely to use these things chopping up fruit and bottles and maybe some pieces of wood or some branches or whatever. And for that purpose, having them be a little bit thicker and a little bit sturdier is fine. Has no like negative bearing. That's good. That means they will last that much longer. They'll be able to take that much more punishment from a novice, which is what I am. And if the day may come when I'm forced to have a one-on-one duel with a sword master, well, fuck, it will be the culmination of supreme irony if that ever were to happen after having made a video about how supremely unlikely that event ever is to be. So yeah, there's a lot of that going on. There's a lot of, well, a good knife should be brandishing the following, and they don't, and so I don't like it. Again, not a fair review. And it's funny, like somebody had posted a question asking for reviews of the blades, and somebody had chimed in that they've never held one, they've never touched one, but based on the way the website is arranged, they conclude that they're not serious. That's not a review, and it was funny because this person was very adamant that they were really onto something because and when you go to their website, they do list the length, the weight, what type of steel it is, but they don't list every conceivable characteristic. And this guy was really latching onto that and saying, look, if they're not going to list all that, then they can't be serious. But everybody who's handled them and who's tried them out, and most of the people who review them are serious blade people. I'm not. Okay, I'm not a serious blade person, so like my opinion isn't. I can't say that because I made this video I'm an expert and you should listen to me. But what I can say is everybody who is an expert and does this like full time, when they've ever reviewed them, they've only had very good things to say. The only things that they'll say are the same things like that I've said, that okay, they're a little bit heftier, they're a little bit harder, and they're not, pricey is not the right word, but they cost what they are, and that's expensive. I mean, the quality is there. Scalagram in his review of the Defos said the quality is there. Like the money that you spend, it's all in the blade. It's there. You're not really getting upcharge. But the thing is, that's something that a lot of people can't really afford, which is too bad. But so, I look at these. I own these blades now forever. No matter what happens, I will have them. I never have to do a splurge like this again. They'll be interesting to work with. I'm gonna have a lot of fun. I've purchased some instructional materials on how to use some of these, not all of them, because they don't all have the same techniques, I'm sure. And that looks like something that I think I'll have a lot of fun with. Um, I would recommend, I don't say recommend. I like all of them. I think if you like the aesthetic, by all means, look at them. I don't know if I'll be buying much more from them just because I think I pretty much got everything that I would like, except for they had a Viking sword design called the Ferris Wolf that was I liked a lot, and they discontinued it about a year ago before I'd ever heard of them. It's my understanding that they intend to bring out another version of that, a larger version, probably this fall sometimes. I will likely purchase that, but I don't know if I'll buy anything else. And that's, of course, one of the reasons they retire blades. I think they have a lot of repeat customers, and someone like me, once I bought everything that they have or everything that they have that I want, the only way they're going to get my money again is if they come out with something new that I also want. And I think that's one of the reasons they cycle through blades relatively frequently. And I think most of them are going to last for a year or two, or maybe a little bit more. But it is something, they have a limited production capability, which is why you have to wait about 6 weeks. And yeah, it's not one of those things that's always going to be there waiting for you to make up your mind, which is unusual. Like in capitalism, most goods are just kind of always there if you want them. You can get old movies and old books, and all that stuff is there if you pay the price. This is something that the supply is pretty limited, and so you can't always count on that. So, I was fortunate. This was definitely a splurge, but on the other hand, I could very easily afford it, so it was no big deal really. Um, I'm going to enjoy them a lot. And yeah, so I don't intend to make other Blade review videos unless someone posts here that they're really curious about one of these. I might then. Otherwise, I doubt it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So and they're useful. I mean, they potentially have a high degree of utility. I feel better going on a walk at night, having something like this at my hands. In my car, I've driven across the country, and 99% of the United States is perfectly safe. You have nothing to worry about, and 1% of it can be dangerous. And the thing is, you don't always know what areas are going to be dangerous or not dangerous. I've driven across the country, and I'll stop at a gas station at 2 a.m. that just got robbed. That's happened to me a couple times. Um, it would be nice to have, I could just see somebody try and stick you up with a switchblade, and you pull this out. I mean, that doesn't mean that you're not still in a dangerous situation, and it doesn't mean you wouldn't pull out a gun if you had that even closer. I'm just saying this is just one more option. Like, it has practically, or if you're in the woods, it's not just people, animals. If you were in contact with a rabid dog or a coyote or whatever, hey, this might be something that's good to have. Um, and yeah, so uh, if anyone has any questions about them, let me know. I haven't really used these roots to chop much stuff up yet, but I probably will in the next couple days or next week or two. And that's pretty much it. All right, bye bye.